My 60 Years on the Plains, Chapter 14. We raised our traps and packed up to move camp, constructing 4 travois for those who were wounded. Duringer said we could reach the Umatilla River by sundown, and we did so. In this section were to be found a tribe of Umatillas who had friendly inclinations toward trappers, and who were enemies of the Bannocks. We were soon discovered, and the chief, accompanied by a few braves, paid us a visit. He was over 6 feet tall and was a fine-looking Indian. The Hudson Bay men had christened him William Schnook. When we returned to Green River in 1845, the report of our fight with Halleck had spread all over that country, and we were asked many times why we had charged these Indians. They claimed that we had the Indians whipped before the charge and that we were secure in our camp. Our answer was that if we had not charged them, they would have annoyed us constantly, and we wanted to stop that and force them to respect the white man. The trappers felt confident of their ability to rout them, with little loss to themselves. The after result confirmed the wisdom of our course, for ever after that fight, these Bannocks dreaded trappers. I've heard Hudson Bay men relate that when these Indians acted arrogantly, they would scare them by saying, "We will bring those trappers if you don't behave." The threat always had the effect of restraining them. Indians won't stand a white man's charge. They dread close quarters and get bewildered. I've heard it claimed that the Indians can hold their own in a hand-to-hand conflict. The experiences of old mountain men do not show this to be the case. 50 determined white men of experience can rout almost any number of Indians. I know that this is so. Duringer could converse with the Umatillas in Chinook, and he told them of our fight with Halleck, showing the scalps and the bows and arrows. The chief became greatly excited and dispatched a runner to his village, and in a short while every Umatilla in the country appeared at our camp. They were the most excited lot of Indians I ever saw, and wanted us to move our camp to their village, as they were sure that Halleck would follow us to seek revenge for the loss of so many warriors. We refused his kindness, declaring that we considered Halleck and his warriors as so many old women. This was big talk, but it had its effect. These Indians had never seen so many scalps taken at one time, and they had never heard of such a thing. They brought us an abundance of dried salmon and fresh deer meat and were very friendly. The chief was a fair sign talker, but he was somewhat astonished to see a smooth-faced boy who could excel him. He asked me what tribe I belonged to or if I was a half-breed. Our men understood all this and railed me plenty about being a half-breed. The chief had a fine horse, which we wanted for Perkins, so we brought scalps and other things and laid them in a heap at the chief's feet, pointing to his horse. He understood in a moment, and taking the horse by the rope, passed it over to Williams, who in turn led it to Perkins. The old veteran was greatly pleased with the act, and the trappers were happy to be able to show the esteem in which he was held. George Perkins, a native of Louisiana, merited all he received. He was brave and generous to a fault, and was ever on the alert for the interest of all. We remained in this camp 8 days and collected lots of furs. The Umatillas, meanwhile, kept a sharp lookout for Bannocks, but seeing none. On the 9th day, our wounded men were able to ride, and we moved down the river to the base of the mountains. From a high knoll, we could see the entire Walla Walla Valley, and it was a most beautiful panorama. The Umatillas also moved their village and camped 3 miles below us. The first season was now over, and we took advantage of this opportunity to explore the country, remaining here 2 weeks. Cayuse and Walla Walla Indians visited us. They were clean and somewhat proud and very little addicted to begging. All these tribes were enemies to the Bannocks, who were constantly stealing their horses. The tribes owned large numbers of horses, and I've been asked where they got them. Many years prior to this, the Indians had learned that there were great numbers of horses in Southern California. Thereupon, the Nez Perce, the Yakimas, the Cayuses, and others made up a strong war party, and they went to Sacramento Valley and returned with a vast herd. In later years, when I asked them, the Nez Perce confirmed this story. The 2 weeks passed very pleasantly. Our time was spent in exploring, hunting, and fishing. Game was abundant on every side: deer, elk, mountain sheep, and we had all the fresh meat we wanted. The streams were full of trout. The Indians were enjoying themselves to their heart's content with their nightly scalp dances. Williams and I remained in their village one night, and I visited most of the lodges. They were neat, clean, and well furnished. The Indians were hospitable to friends. They had an abundance to eat, such as camas root, none of which is produced far east of the Rocky Mountains, dried fish, meats, and berries. They occupied a rich and beautiful country, and Williams, in commenting on it, said, "The time is not far distant when this country will teem with life and the Indian will pass away." Our men had now fully recovered, and we were ready to go. Duringer said that there was a beautiful valley situated about 100 miles west, which the Hudson Bay men called Tygh Valley, Tygh. We bade the Umatillas goodbye and went to Tygh Valley, expecting to remain there until furs should come in season, which would be about September 15. We traveled slowly and made many camps, stopping 3 days at a beautiful stream called John Day River to hunt and fish. We next moved to Deschutes River, the fountainhead of which is the summit of the Sierra Range. We crossed the river below the falls, which must have been about 30 feet in height. Here, the Indians secured large quantities of salmon by spearing. Their spears are made of light pine and are from 7 to 9 feet long and about 1.5 inches in diameter. The lower end is tapering and is wrapped with linen. A spike about 5 inches in length, sharpened at the points and wrapped in the center with cloth, is fixed in a cavity of the shaft. The fisherman launches the shaft at a salmon, having a cord fastened at the upper end of the shaft and around his waist. When the spike enters the fish, the shaft is withdrawn, leaving the spike in the fish. They never fail to bring the fish to shore. They split the salmon open at the back and spread them on racks to dry in the sun for future use. At the falls was camped a village of Indians whom Duringer produced to be Dog Creek tribe. They were friendly. About 70 miles north of this place was a Hudson Bay trading post situated on the Columbia River. As we had collected a considerable stock of furs, we concluded to visit the trader and dispose of them. It is my first sight of the Columbia River with its scenery, beautiful beyond description. The trader was Dr. McLaughlin, a formal but courteous gentleman who owned a large share in the Hudson Bay Company's lucrative business. We traded all our furs for cash and goods and had to wait 3 days while a runner went to Vancouver, the company's headquarters, for the cash. The head men of the Hudson Bay Company did not look favorably on American trappers and traders. They claimed the right to collect all furs in a given area on the American side, having a charter to hold their forts and trading stations up to 1861 or 1862. We held some interesting arguments on the subject, and Williams, who was better posted than the doctor, told him that their exclusive right was past and that in the near future, all Oregon and the country up to the 49th parallel would be settled by Americans. Then he said they would have to move all their forts to the British side of the line. Dr. McLaughlin was somewhat surprised when Williams gave him the whole history of the country and said he had not expected so much information from a trapper. All in all, we passed a very pleasant time with him, and he presented us with 5 gallons of port wine, inviting us to call again if we ever revisited this section. We returned to Deschutes River and camped about 4 miles above the Dog Indian village. They visited us daily, bringing fresh salmon. It was June, and the fish were coming up the river. In the meantime, everything was being put in condition for fall trapping. George Howard remarked one day, "The people back in the States, they have no conception of the life of a trapper. One day it would be all peace and harmony, with the trappers enjoying life as few could even in civilization. The next day, just the reverse among hostile Indians." End of chapter 14.